So, the CSM Ghost Driver just got teased, and there's a lot that I kind of want to talk about because, to quickly explain for people that haven't watched my coverage on the Ghost toy line on the main channel, uh, despite the discrepancies with the show, Ghost is actually one of my favorite rider toy lines in terms of roleplay for the most part, as I am really fond of the Ghost Driver in terms of playability and its sounds, and the Ghost icons, I just really like them overall and such. So, one of the things, I think I stated this in my reviews of Ghost, I think 3 years ago, I was kind of a big advocate for Ghost to get the CSM treatment because there are multiple things that I think CSM could improve on Ghost and such. Now, for anyone like baffled about Ghost getting the CSM treatment rather than like Force, Wizard, or even Drive, I think it's kind of obvious. It's literally because they have the molds of the Ghost Driver straps for the high spec releases already. They've done them 3 times at this point. They just haven't done the actual Ghost Driver itself. So, from a production standpoint, it kind of makes sense to like just go ahead and do the Ghost Driver because you've already produced the belt straps 3 times. You just need to make a new back piece because you need to modify the back piece to the Ghost icon because they've already done the iterations after. So, yeah, it just makes sense. But again, the rest of this will just be speculation because as of recording, it is 11:50 p.m. of April 9th. They haven't officially like given us product spreads yet. So, I'm just going to speculate for what is most likely going to happen or how things are going to get laid out and such. But one of the core things that are definitely going to get improved from this toy is for the driver to actually identify which rider you are. For those that don't know, the way the Ghost Driver worked, which is at up to like 64 sound combinations and such, or pin combinations, gives us 64 sounds. I think you have to subtract 4 because 4 of those are blanks. But for those 60 sounds, they are hard coded with specific like standbys and such. And only 5 of those sounds are coded for Spectre specifically, while the rest are coded for Ghost. Which means that with the DX version, for example, if you wanted to roleplay as Spectre using Edison Damashi, that's not possible because Edison is locked to Bachiri Mina instead of Bachiri Muro. And that's also the case with the Legend Rider Ghost icons too. All the Legend Riders were coded with Bachiri Mina. So, for sure, with the CSM release, they're going to make it so that for whatever mode you're in, that it will stay with that like rider specific standby. So I didn't explain this enough because I just kind of went over it, and then because I do explain it later. But basically, what I mean is that there isn't, because the standbys are like hard coded into which icon it was. So like for example, with Spectre, you can't exactly replicate him Ghost changing into Edison because that's hard locked into Bachi and Mina, while with Ghost you can't like roleplay as him using Houdini because it's hard locked into Bachimiro. And we've already saw that issue with how Pythagoras and Tenka Tollets were handled. So with locking this to specific modes, this will reduce that. And speaking of modes, I feel like it's going to at least be up to 6 modes. Obviously comprising of each user of the Ghost Driver. To which I might have to increase to 7, because I would assume they're going to make Clone Makoto a separate mode. Separate from Makoto. But now for like Takaru and Makoto, in terms of ghost changes, I think they're going to have modes within modes. Because obviously, besides Ore and Spectre for Takaru and Makoto, they can ghost change when they are transformed into Tokon Boost and Deep Spectre respectively. So I assume the way this will work, it's either going to be built within the belt itself, or they're going to make you chain ghost icons. So like, for example, if you actually want to replicate like Takaru transform as Ghost using Ryoma Damashi as Ore Damashi, I assume they're gonna make it so that they're either gonna make it so that you're in like Ore mode for Takaru, or they're gonna make it so that you chain the Ore Ghost icon and then Ryoma Ghost icon one after another to get Ghost in Ryoma Damashi with the base of Ore Damashi. And like same thing with like Makoto mode, for example, for you to do like Houdini Damashi as Deep Spectre and such. Now, some people might be wondering, why does this matter? Because it will give us different finisher sounds. For example, with Spectre, for example, he has 2 different like finishers of when he uses Edison Damashi as normal Spectre and Deep Spectre. I think as normal Spectre, he just did a Gon hand finisher, but when he was transformed as Deep Spectre using the Edison Damashi, he did a Rider Kick. That's basically kind of the only reason why they need to kind of do something about that in regards to those 2. But with like riders like Dark Ghost, Zero Spectre, and like Kanon Spectre, I don't think they need to worry about that because they only have the one form. So I think it's just going to be the case with like the Takaru and like Makoto modes where they're going to need to kind of like take that into account and such. And then like the second thing I wanted to point out is obviously how exactly are the sound, like the icons that have their own sounds, going to work with the CSM version. Because obviously this was kind of a problem with the DX version, because all the icons following Tokon Boost were like super inconsistent, because you had ones like the 2 Necrom icons that the moment you insert them, they play right away. Then you get the Spectre ones, Deep Spectre and Sin Spectre, that when you insert it, they wait a second and then play. And then you get Mugen, which actually times itself for you to insert it and then close it, and then it will play its sound. Because in the show, the way it works is that the icon is supposed to, it's like how Tokon Boost works. You insert it, and then its additional phrase plays immediately. But obviously in the show, it overlaps. But obviously you can't do that with most of them, because they're just programmed inconsistently. So I assume that for the CSM version, they will finally be all consistent, and then that, I assume they're going to have to take the like Gaim route where they're going to start building in, they're going to build the sounds into the Ghost Driver. So like for like Deep Spectre, for example, the Deep Spectre Ghost icon will probably only do like the activation sounds. it'll no longer like, and probably, and obviously the dive too deep, unless that's built into the Ghost Driver. But obviously, it will at least do the activation sound, and then when you insert it, the rest of it will be the Ghost Driver. I think that's how I'll assume it will work. But that's also assuming that they will use the same pin system for the Ghost Driver. I feel like it's just cheaper to do so, but I can kind of see them trying to push the price of the Ghost Driver and like changing the pin system. Because if I had to backtrack, obviously there's also cases of like with Tokon Boost, for example. I assume that they're going to add Tosan Boost from Troll Movie Tyson Genesis, even though I think that came from the Sunglass Slasher. But we're obviously going to have Tosan Boost sounds, and then there's the dilemma of having to deal with the Heisei Rider Damashi and the Xei Damashi being the same sound, but them needing to actually differentiate them just so then they can actually play out different sounds. Again, that's if they actually bother with memorializing all of the program sounds and such, to which I would assume they have to, because I'm assuming they want to sell this toy for like $300, despite the fact that's not worth it. But like, other than that, like there's even I feel like even like Special Damashi will kind of have that dilemma too, because of like Kanon Spectre and then like the Kishidan Damashi and such. Because I would assume that maybe they won't, but like I'm kind of assuming that like the CSM Ghost Driver would want to go with the route of, was it the Ultra Replica G Riser, where they actually like take account of like things that happen in Gamba Rising and such. Because I would assume that they obviously they have to incorporate that stuff. Obviously, besides the actual Damashi itself, because I doubt we're actually getting that. But like, obviously, I'm not going to speculate on like obvious stuff of like, oh yeah, they're going to make it more prop accurate or stuff like that. Because yeah, no duh. I'm not even going to like speculate on the button placements, because even I think it's kind of obvious, but at the same time, I can't. I don't have the mental image for that right now. Because I think I more so kind of want to get into of how they're going to probably lay out the releases and such, because I've been getting into it a bit too eagerly. But I'm more concerned with how they're going to like release CSM Ghost, because obviously I've already owned the majority of the Ghost toy line and the Ghost icons. I'm literally only missing Sin Spectre. And I really don't want to double dip if they are going to make us rebuy at least the core Ghost icons. I don't think they're going to go out of their way and like CSMify Nightingale, Ishinomori, Shakespeare, Galileo. Like, I don't think they will go through that effort. I think the only one I think is deserving of it though is probably Da Vinci, because Da Vinci needs to get a like actual like body instead of like a like hollow like body it got because of it being a magazine pack-in. But like, the thing too is that like obviously they want to sell these things for like $100 and such, but like the Ghost Driver, the base of that itself, that's where I'm kind of like, because Dragon brought it up of like they're probably just gonna lay it out the same way that they did the Sengoku Driver, where besides obviously the Ghost Driver and like the straps, it's probably only going to comprise of Ore, Tokon Boost, and Mugen and such, which I think makes sense. I'm just not going to agree with Bandai potentially selling it for the same price as the CSM Sengoku Driver, because the CSM Sengoku Driver was sold for $325 because it came with 2 straps, and all the gimmicks it came with were like electronic and such. Like, I mean, then again, like, I know in yen, I think Tokon Boost is 2,500 now, and Mugen is like 40,000 now, as opposed to like how it was back in 2016. And like, I guess ghost icons are. I swear, if ghost icons are like $10 a piece now, that is kind of ridiculous. But, and like, obviously you have to account for the high spec belts selling for like $70 a piece. So yeah, like, that's why I think it's more reasonable for the CSM Ghost Driver itself to be for like sell for $250 or like $275. I think that's a more fair price and such. I think if it's like over 300, that's kind of nonsense. It's just the icons I'm more worried with how those are going to be handled and such. Because I thought of 2 directions. They either just give us the main 15 right away and then release everything else in their own thing, or they go the Gaim route and release it by like rider and such. So for example, like the first icon set will be like the CSM icon Ore set, comprising of obviously like Musashi through Benkei, but then throwing in EQ. So then it's 8. Because again, if we're going with the idea that like the icons are going to be $10 a piece, which is again ridiculous, because they're literally just going to be, I'm pretty sure like obviously the icons are going to be prop accurate, and by prop accurate, they're just going to remove the hollow foil aspect of them and basically going to be in line with the Candy Toy Gashapon ones, just in the build of the DX ones. And then that Robin Hood will finally get corrected in DX form, technically. And then like set 2 will be like the like icon Tokon Boost / Dark Ghost set, to comprise of the 3 main Tokon Boost icons plus Darwin, and then you can throw in Tenka Towitz because they need to even out. So then you can have like Dark Ghost and Napoleon, but that's 7. So maybe they'll throw in Da Vinci, unless I'm forgetting someone. And then for the third one, it can be the like Icon Spectre set, which this price range wise, this will be the same price range as like the like bigger CSM Gaim sets, like the Kurishima set of like 125, as like the Spectre set will obviously comprise of Spectre's main 4 icons plus Pythagoras, Deep Spectre, and Sin Spectre, and then you will throw in Zero Spectre and Count on Spectre and such. Because I feel like that's kind of going to be the best way they're going to like monopolize unreasonably, or their justification as to why CSM Ghost should like be a continuing series as opposed to just being one and done and such. Like what I said before, if they are going to do it this way, I hope it just, I hope it's just, it makes the price of the DX Sin Spectre Ghost icon to go down, so then I can actually get that thing. But again, if they're going to go with the route of, oh, well, the icons themselves are still going to make the sounds, or like, because I would prefer that wasn't the case. I would just prefer if, I'll prefer like Sin Spectre, for example, they only just made it do the activation sound, and then like everything else is built into the belt. So then I have less of an incentive to double dip. Because again, I generally just don't want to double dip this line. Other than that, I think that I think that's everything I wanted to like share, because again, we would just have to wait for more details to come out. Obviously, this will mean we will get a CSM Mega Loader. I'm not going to be surprised if they're going to like dump all 4 of Necrom's ghost icons with that release. But at the same time, too, that's why I like first suggested the idea of them just dropping all 15 ghost icons, or 15 of the legendary ghost icons, because I think it would be kind of sucky for them to hold off on Grim and Sanso for the sake of the Mega Loader. Because I think, or that's why I think it's also reasonable if they just give us 2 methods like what they did with CSM Gaim. I keep bringing up CSM Gaim, but that's because it's... No, Gaim is not a phase 2 hasty rider. No, like he is. I meant like, I don't know. Meant in my head, I keep breaking up phase 2 into 2 halves. That's why I get confused. But like, you know, because Gaim was like the last like gimmick heavy. Oh, I mean, technically it's double right now, but like Gaim, I'm going off of Gaim because Gaim obviously was like 2 years before Ghost and such. Like, the CSM Gaim line gave us like ways of like getting specific items in certain ways and such, which is why I'm kind of hoping with CSM Ghost they potentially just do like a buckle set or something like that, or like, I don't know, call it the Proto Ghost Driver set, where it's just the Ghost Driver and the straps, because so then I can freely get that without having to deal with rebuying the entire line and such. Because like, again, it's like I really do like the Ghost Driver. I own 2 of them. I own the Japanese one and I own the Korean one. It's just that obviously like I have to be more selective with like what I want to buy into, and it's just I don't want to buy into the CSM Ghost icons just to like box them away, because I have the DX ones more accessible than the like CSM ones. But at the same time, it's just like I'm more curious with how like the electronic ghost icons are going to work, or whether or not, if they will either work the same or if they'll actually work different, because I would obviously prefer for them to work different and such, so then they're more in tandem with each other, rather than like having to like rush ourselves to like play with the icons. I'd rather like, you know, play with them at ease. Like eventually when we get the Necrom Ghost icon, I don't want to feel rushed playing with that thing. I want to take my time inserting that thing in and then like closing it up and such. But again, that's why I feel like the scariest thing that could potentially happen is because of the fact that they need to do something in regards to like they need to, you know, they need to get as much money from the consumer, and most of the ghost icons are going to have a random square block in the back of them, because that was where with the Gamba Rising QR codes used to be. Obviously, they don't need to use them. So I think the scariest thing they could probably do is make it so that all of the ghost icons, they remove the pin system and make it work through NFC. Because then that's just going to be a torturous way of us having to like buy into the line. I don't think they will go through that effort. But I won't be surprised if they do something like that just to justify why it's potentially going to be like $325 because we changed out the entire pin system to be NFC. So then we don't. So then like the Hasty Rider Damashi and the like XA Damashi can be read as two separate things, and so then we can actually get Tokan boost and Tosan boost together and such. Even though, again, I assume that's just going to be a thing that you can just activate within, like, obviously Takuru mode, and then like you would just have to like hold a button for it to shout Tokan, or it'll be like Ore Tokan, or it'll like shout out like Tosan, and then like you set it like that. I'm pretty sure that's just how it's going to work and such. But that's really all there is.